If I look back on my life and the path that I went through to get educated, it was pretty traditional. I went through a 12-year cycle of primary and secondary school and then was expected to go out and get a degree and qualify further in a chosen field and then to go and work work for 40 years and then retire at 65. But it didn't turn out like that because after a year of studying after school in an engineering degree, I just found out that I wasn't cut out to be an engineer. I'd actually studied the completely wrong thing. So when our kids came along, we actually followed that exact same path. We sent them to school, the primary school and the secondary school, and they were going to go on like their contemporaries and finish off their 12 years of education, and then they would go and get a degree and qualify and go on from there. But halfway through that process, Sue and I, we started exploring the option of a home-based education or homeschooling them. And we decided to take the plunge and take them out of private schools where they had a very privileged education and bring them home and teach them. And we started off by replicating school at home. So we took and registered for a course pretty similar to the schooling course, and we brought them home. We started to teach them in exactly the same fashion they would have been taught at school, except that now we're doing it at home. And it just didn't work. The whole system just imploded. The kids weren't happy, we weren't happy. And what we realized over a period of time is that both our children had very different ways of learning. The one had an auditory style of learning, the other one was more a visual style of learning. They assimilated information differently. They assimilated knowledge differently. And we started to realize that there were different options and different paths that people can take to get to the same outcome. So the outcome that ultimately they were going to get to was to write a grade 12 equivalent exam, and they would pass their schooling, and then they could decide what to do with their lives. But Jess had more of an art-based approach. She was very, very arty, and Jake had more of a tech-based approach. And he learnt in a very, very different way, very different to the way that I'd learnt. And what we learned through this process is that there's not one size that fits all when you look at education for people. And often when you jam people into a system where they treat everybody exactly the same, the outcomes that you receive are very, very poor. And you'll know from just the people around you and possibly yourself that you might have gone through 12 years of education and then done a 4 or 5 year degree and maybe even specialized, and then ended up in a position in your life where you started questioning whether you'd actually chosen the right path to study and whether you wanted to continue doing that for the rest of your life. And that is not uncommon at all. It's actually something that is very, very common and prevalent in our society today. It's why we have such high dropout rates in universities and colleges. It's because people haven't chosen the right path. And the thing that's important to understand here is that you've gone through 12 years of schooling and then done another 4 or 5 years of additional education on top of that. You might end up being 24, 25 before you get to a point where you can actually start earning. You might get to that point with a massive student debt, which takes you the next 10 or 20 years to pay off. And you might have actually been in a position where you're not even happy with the career path that you've chosen, but you're stuck. So how could we develop a better outcome? Well, we thought about this long and hard at Ford Protocol, and what we have come up with would reform and redefine the whole way education is approached. It would actually help you find the right tutors, the right experts, the right teachers to gain the information you need to actually move on with your particular career. Let's look at this scenario. Imagine there are two people. The one has got an interest in fashion and the other one has got an interest in business. They both need to do a marketing course and get the credits, the 10 credits for a marketing course, towards the degree that they're getting. What would typically happen is they would go to university and they would sit in the same classroom, would be taught by a teacher that's teaching that marketing course. Not an ideal outcome for those two different points of departure. Let's look at this scenario. Imagine a university is a facilitation center and they have 30 different teachers on their books that teach that marketing course. They have experts in the fashion world, in the business world. They have experts in the agricultural world. They have experts in finance. They have experts in banking. And you as a student can actually approach that course through an expert of your choice. So imagine I'm a fashion person and I I want to do a course that has an orientation in fashion, I would go to a marketing teacher that has got a fashion background and would teach me that course in fashion. You, on the other hand, might have an interest in business or in finance, and you would find a teacher that's suited to your interest and your passion, and you'd learn from them. At the end of the day, we both sit down and write the same exam, the same marketing exam, which would be validated by an external accreditation center, and we both pass through that and get the credits. The difference here is that we didn't approach it from the same point. I approach it from a fashion point of view, and you approach it from a business point of view. My interest is in passion. I'm enthusiastic about the course. I learned the information faster than I would have if I was sitting in a business course. You, on the other hand, are not interested in fashion, so why should you learn from a fashion marketing person? And we have a situation here where now we have an education process that is being sped up because people are interested in what they're learning. They are retaining the knowledge, learning faster, and they're in a position where they are able to go through a course and come out with an interest that is in the direction of the way they would like to pursue their working life. We should be providing an education for people in an environment that actually encourages them to follow their passions because they will learn faster. An example of this is my son hates reading, but if you give him a surf magazine, he reads the whole magazine. So if I'd put a history book in front of him, or an English grammar book in front of him, and a geography book in front of him, and said, you have to read this to learn English, to actually learn how to read, he would have been totally bored. But because we put some information in front of him, a resource in front of him that he was interested in, that he had a passion in, he reads fluently and he understands English, and he can actually move on and learn other subjects that have got an interest for him. So at Ford Protocol, what we've designed is a framework that underpins the education system that can allow this transfer of knowledge to take place, where you have people with common interests that are sharing and transferring that knowledge, which makes it much more easy for them to grasp, much more easy for them to absorb, and they do it with a passion and an energy, and they learn with an enthusiasm. And isn't that what education should be about? We are going to be learning for the rest of our lives. Education now is a lifelong process. Shouldn't you be learning something that you're enthusiastic about, that you love? Shouldn't you be learning it from someone that shares the same passion as you? That transfer of knowledge becomes so much easier, so much better. And we can create that transfer and the reward mechanism between those two parties to allow them to love their education, to learn in an environment that they're passionate about, and to get the best outcome for their lives.